Well, hey, all, welcome to yet another episode of the Higher Line Podcast. We've got a living legend from the special operations community that's going to share with us today. But first, I want to make sure that you guys know that this episode is brought to us by Ignis Lux Coffee. Ignis Lux is Latin for firelight. It denotes that fire that burns in us all, and a reminder to drink excellent coffee and let that fire burn. It is also brought to us by our good friends at Supervel Ammunition. I like to say Supervel is super awesome. Duty ammo or bulk training ammo. And by the way, this bulk training ammo delivers some amazing downrange groups. Let's dig right in with Mr. John Holschen. Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line Podcast. All right, all. As I told you, we've got a very special guest here. This is Mr. John Holschen. John, you're out west. You're in Washington, aren't you?
I am. I'm in the Seattle area.
Seattle. Tell us, probably easier for you to say who you are, and then I can maybe fill in some blanks.
Gosh.
Come on, you've done a million of these.
Yeah, I've done a million of these, but when I kind of realized, kind of going back, because I think your approach is a little different in that you are more holistic in how you approach things. And as I think about my typical introduction and where I start, and just thinking about that a little bit this morning and thinking more holistically, I started developing these skills that I now bring to the table in these things as a kid. And frankly, my grandfather was a boxer, was a wrestler back when there used to be Saturday night wrestling in every little small town. He was a traveling piano tuner who had a secondary career as a professional gambler. He knew where every illegal crap game and poker game was in every little town in the Midwest, I believe. So bottom line, he was out there in bad places with bad people, and he thought it was important to be able to defend yourself and defend what you thought was right. So man, I was boxing as a little kid and wrestling and weightlifting with my grandfather, and I think that's where it really started was way back then.
So did you grow up in the Midwest?
I grew up a military brat, so I was traveling all over the place. Lived in 10 or 12 states before I was an adult. So yeah, but went from there, got in junior high school, got involved in small bore rifle competition. In those days, school still had rifle teams, both junior high and high school. Got involved in martial arts about the same time. Earned my first black belt in Shotokan karate shortly after I graduated from high school. Was heavily immersed in martial arts at that point. Subsequent black belts in Shorinkan karate and Daito Ruaiki Budo. At that point, went in the military, had a break in service, went to college, but actually I trained martial arts for literally about 40 hours a week for about 3.5 years. And
how old were you at that point doing all that martial arts?
Mid 20s. Well, okay. At that point, mid 20s. Yeah. So went back in the military, had most of my, about half my Army time was in human intelligence, was a Russian linguist back in the days of the Cold War, and talking to people that were coming out of the Soviet Union and others around Europe. And then went Special Forces, last half of my career in SF. Originally as a weapons sergeant, then as a medic, intel sergeant, team sergeant ultimately. Then from there, GWAT, and I worked as a contractor for a while, went back working for some government folks more directly for a while, back into contracting, a lot of training throughout that whole time frame. And that was something consistent for me. I'd been teaching something physical since, teenager, teaching, as a lifeguard water safety instructor, so teaching swimming. Then my original martial arts dojo, black belt, was a teaching position. And so there was a lot of effort and time spent on developing you as an instructor. And then had a tour at the Special Forces School during a time that we were massively rewriting the curriculum to introduce modern what's now tactical combat casualty care methodology
Hmm.
into the medic
Hmm.
course. So got some formal training and curriculum design there. And that's really, you know, my interest in all of this defensive related stuff is how it relates to self-defense. Um, that's
What did your dad do in the service?
he was a Marine and was a combat cargo officer in the Marine Corps, assigned to Navy ships a good bit of the time.
Was he upset that you went to the Army?
No, not at all. No, he's a rare Marine in that regard.
He was okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely. He's,
So you were a weapons guy and then became a Delta. So that seems
yep.
like is that a normal path? The guys switch over to that? It seems like every Green Beret
Well,
medic I've known has kind of been like one track minded on that.
Well, there was a time in SF that deltas and echoes, medics and communicators were so shorthanded that they actually, actively recruited, sent letters out to the commands, messages out to the commands, actively recruiting. And the idea was that, if we've got people who've already special forces qualified, we know they're going to make it through. They don't need that portion of the training. They don't need the gut check. They don't need the background info. So let's see if we can retrain them as medics and communicators. So 5 of us actually left first special forces group at the same time. All weapons sergeants, if I remember correctly. Might have been one engineer in there, but the rest of us were weapons sergeants, all going back to the medic course. So yeah, that was an effort.
About what year was that, John?
That was, man, my wife laughs when I try and do years. I'm
Just
so bad with
close, just
years. So
close.
that was
Like 1860?
1989, 90. No, it would have
Okay.
been medic time would have been after that, 90, 91, 92, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What'd that look like in those days? What kind of training? How many
Uh,
how many weeks, months, days, couple
yeah.
hours, 4
Gosh,
hour
yeah,
program and you're good
couple
to
couple
go?
hours and you're good to go, right? Actually, when I went through the medic course, they were just starting the paramedic bridge program as well.
Oh, okay.
So I went through the medic course, and then about a year later, spent 10 weeks in a bridge program to become a nationally registered paramedic. But yeah, the medic course was, gosh, overall was probably about 20 weeks or so at that point, but we didn't have to go to phase 1 or phase 3. So just the medic course was 12 weeks, maybe 16 weeks. I don't honestly remember, but yeah, 12 or 16 weeks of just the medic portion at Bragg. And
Okay.
it was after how many ever weeks, 8, 10 weeks at Fort Sam. So yeah, a good bit of training.
So is that the moving forward, is that what you stayed doing? Or did you bounce around into other
Yeah,
career
I bounced
paths?
around a fair amount. I really liked medicine, but man, it is all consuming. If you're going to be a good SF medic, man, you need to live, eat, sleep, breathe it. Continuing education is massive. It's and I was a group medic at first group for a while, and kind of oversaw that for other guys as well.
Okay.
But that's just a massive investment in your time. When I went back, or after GWAT got going, my first gig was as a medic, frankly, because the pay was higher than anybody else. So I took a medic gig, and they were shorthanded. But even there, what I found was I really well, I've got a healthy uh, what's the word I'm looking for here? I think fairly well of my own strategic thinking and tactical thinking, and got in some situations and places, and said, I think I can do a better job as a team leader than some of the folks that I'm working under, and I got the opportunity to show them that, and moved into leadership positions that really weren't using medic skills. I mean, it's always there when something happens. If you're the first guy there, you're working it, and I'm there to back up the medic when appropriate. But actually moved into more leadership roles. and in
Okay.
related roles as well. Even in the contracting world, the doing advanced work is very similar to some other things that I had done and did later in Intel. And that you're going out, you're talking to people, you're looking at things, and you're coming back and either integrating that information in your own planning or providing it to other people to integrate into their planning. And
Mm-hmm.
uh, and frankly, I think I enjoy that even more than doing medic stuff.
Okay. So you wanted to come on and talk about some stuff you're doing and how you're doing it. What is it?
Yeah.
You selling some Amway?
Yeah, absolutely, man. Pyramid scheme.
Some of these youngsters have no idea what Amway even is, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, really. I mean, it all kind of lumps into a thought that I have, and I call it aligning training with reality. And, that starts with a needs analysis, whether you're talking about, we're redesigning the medic course or you're talking about designing your own training program. It's got to start with it should start with a needs analysis so that you're studying the right stuff, right? And then it moves from there to how we're studying it. So, needs analysis has to start with a mission statement. You got to look at what kind of situations you might find yourself in. What are the potential solutions for those situations? That moves then into what are the skills, knowledge, and attributes I need to be successful in those situations. Followed by how do I acquire those skills, knowledge, and attributes? How do I practice and gain proficiency in them? And then a mental commitment to execute those, at the proper time and place. And right now, what I see is we kind of pre turning on the recording mentioned, man, there are so many super skilled shooters out there, just super skilled shooters and super skilled instructors, people that can transmit that knowledge. And that is absolutely awesome. It's absolutely critical information. However, when you do the needs analysis, you realize that's only one of the skill sets that I need. And frankly, even there, we can get misled, in my opinion, sometimes. Um, what we're after, of course, is unconscious performance of skills. And well, how do we get unconscious performance of skills? What's your thoughts on that?
well, it's funny when your intro to your thought process. Um, we have a whole discussion we go through with students. Why am I here? That's what we start with. Like, why am I here? It could be here in
Yeah,
the training room. It could be in the sales room at my brother's car dealership or
sure.
whatever. Like, what are we doing here? And
Yeah,
kind of work down from there. I think too often, I mean, whatever the thing is, being good at changing tires or kata on a heavy bag, if we don't have that clearly defined and really have kind of big picture, how is this thing that I'm plugging in? What's it look like at the end state? One of my Air Force buddies, that's his conversation piece. He's always, what's the end state? What's the end state?
yeah,
And he's very good about that kind of thinking. So um, I guess that question opens up 50 other questions.
mhm,
Is it a perishable skill? Like, I don't feel that turning the turn signal on or off in my car is a perishable skill. Once I kind of put that in, I can do that in your car. I can do that in mine.
yeah,
Um, Reloading a pistol really quick while jogging across a flat range, that's pretty perishable. And
yeah,
that's a
absolutely.
completely different animal. So
Right.
um, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to
No,
not
no,
directly answer your
absolutely.
question.
Yeah. Well, and you're right around. You brought up a number of really good points. And when I look at how we develop those skills, you mentioned the turn signal. I use a lot of driving analogies because although it's been too long ago that I learned to drive to really remember the process, I remember teaching my kids and watching them, the amount of mental effort, the amount of conscious effort they have to
Hmm.
put into getting the car to go where they want and stop where they want. You're approaching an intersection with a crosswalk, nobody around, but you're just, practice area, and you tell them, hey, okay, I want you to stop with your bumper 6 or 8 feet from that crosswalk. And oh man, they put the effort in, they stop like a whole car length short, right? Or 2 feet over the line, and they're totally concentrating on it. Now, people have been driving for a while. You don't even think about that. You perform
No,
that skill unconsciously due to repetition. And I don't know any other shortcut. We do know that high emotional content moves things into that permanent skill sets sooner, more efficiently,
Mm-hmm.
both good and bad. But the bottom line is repetition. And what you do repetitively, you will gain the ability to do unconsciously in most cases. Um, and that has pros and cons because you may do some part of that unconsciously. Well, the definition, part of the definition of unconsciously means we're going to be unaware of some aspects of our performance. It will be at a less than conscious level. For example, a boxer dropping his guard when he throws across. If he doesn't have a coach to point that out to him, he will train and train and train on the heavy bag and will train in what we now would call a training scar, right? He's dropping that
Mm-hmm.
bar, dropping that lead as he throws that cross every time, and an opponent's going to see it and going to nail him. So, what we do to the point of unconscious competence needs to be trained carefully. It needs to be trained with people that understand the parameters and can point out the potential errors. Um, and that's one of the things we need to take into account, as we go along. So, back of tying this back in a little bit. So first I do that needs analysis and we look at shooting and shooting skills. I pissed a bunch of people off in the internet. Imagine that. A year or so ago when I made a comment, I said, being a competitive pistol shooter prepares you to be a gunfighter. And people don't like the term, but we're talking about fighting for your life with a gun.
I remember that when you
Yeah.
shared that in some group, or
Well,
it got shared a few times. Yeah.
yeah. So it prepares you, in my opinion, to the same degree that being a competitive rifle shooter compares you to be a hunter. And I don't mean anything negative by that. It's absolutely essential that you have those skills and that you have them trained to a high degree of proficiency. The only the reason I make the analogy is to point out that to be a successful hunter in most places, there's a lot of other things that have to go into it as well. You got
Mm-hmm.
to know where the animals are. You got to know, you got to take into account the wind. You got to take into account your camouflage. You got to get in the right place, so on and so forth. And so in our needs analysis, we need to look at those other things. And that's really all I'm getting at.
Why do you think people got pissed off at that?
Oh yeah, some people got very pissed off. They
But
told me
why?
very clearly. The probably well, the one I'm thinking about right now said because it didn't need to be said, and I'm like, well, obviously
Like
I
like
must have
like
thought it
like
needed to
he
be said.
knew it. Like you're telling me what you're preaching to the choir, John, like that kind of a.
Possibly, yeah, that may be what he meant. But when I look at it, I say, okay, let's look at our firearms training and well, let me give you another example. I do a fair amount, or used to do even more scenario-based training. So I set up a scenario. I tell them, hey, you're filling your gas tank, pay at the pump was broken, you had to go in, and guess what? Yeah, you figured it out. You're going to be there when bad things happen. So now somebody comes in, they're robbing the place, and my role player is well trained. He wants the money out of the till and he wants to get out of there, and that's it. That's his script, and he's going to stay on script. He's done it dozens and dozens of times. However, he's not going to allow somebody to hurt him or to interfere with that process. So you watch the students, and several of them are behaving as you might expect some people to behave when having a gun pointed at them. And one of them all of a sudden puffs up, assumes a posture that is totally different than everybody else's. It's apparent that he's about to fight. So the role player shoots him in the face. Student gets pissed off, says, what am I supposed to learn from that? All you did was execute me. You walked in here and shot me for no reason. The student was unaware that they had, when I show them the video, it told the story. One of these things is not like the others. You postured up in a way that told that absolutely telegraphed your intent to fight, and that is suboptimal in this situation. So what is that? Where do I go with that? Um, I want to know my draw time when I shot competitively from my competition rig with my hands where they needed to be for whatever that school or that type of competition allowed. But I also want to think about that I don't want to assume a certain posture unconsciously in a situation because I'm about to draw my gun. It's just a simple concept. So I look at the training world and I say, okay, Are there areas that I believe are under-trained or under-recognized? And my answer, of course, is yes. I think there are. And realistic starting positions are just one of them. Um, the perception, cognition, decision cycle, under-trained. Where do we typically get to train it? Scenario-based training is one. The problem there is I'm sure you've engaged in some scenario-based training, probably even provided some scenario-based training. What's
Mm.
your target, or what do you typically see for the number of reps per student per half day or per day of training?
I
What
don't
could you
engage in too
realistically
much.
accomplish?
I don't engage in too much scenario stuff. We do some, um, but you don't get many reps. You get very few
Yeah,
reps, right?
exactly.
It's
If you're
like,
getting
go ahead.
Yeah, I would say if you're getting in 5 reps a day, you're probably you have an extremely well-resourced instructor and instructor cadre. If you're pushing 3 in the morning and 3 in the afternoon,
Yeah.
that's like max that you're going to get. So you get 6 reps a day of actually exercising the perception, cognition, decision cycle. Um, what else can we do to give more reps of that is one of the goals. And that brings us over to work from Dustin Solomon, building shooters. Have you interviewed Dustin?
No,
Not
I
no.
haven't.
You will, I bet you. He's got a lot of great stuff to say. He wrote a book called Building Shooters, and
I think I have it.
one of the things he points out is that in a use of force encounter, all of our decisions, all the information that we require will be visual. You might get supporting information from your ears, but the majority, the decision that you need to make, even if you're a cop showing up at a domestic violence situation, as you get to the door, you hear somebody, in the next room saying, "I'm going to effing kill you." Until you go in there and determine that he's got a weapon in hand, that's actually something he's capable of doing, and you see who it is, you can't apply deadly force. It's going to be based on visual. And we need to stop on visual. And we don't know how many shots it's going to take to acquire that. So I started working to use those kind of drills. And I did things like just handheld lasers so that I could change it because, well, I started like everybody else. Let's do command fire kind of things. Hey, when you turn around, if it's got a green square on it, you should shoot it. Or if it's got a gun prop on it, you should shoot it. If it has a phone prop on it, don't shoot it. And that was better than nothing. That got us making at least a visual perception, but we didn't know how many times, unless we told them ahead of time how many times to shoot. We don't have an indicator of when to stop shooting. Well, then I got turning targets. Well, I can turn it away. Um, no accountability for the late shots that were missed. No idea of how late the late shots were. Difficult to set up more than one behavior. For example, I want to be able to show you a visual indicator you need to talk to him. I want to show you a visual indicator you need to shoot him. And I want at least one more visual indicator of some level of force in between, whether that's I'm working with cops, whether that's a less than lethal or less lethal, or whether that is working with private citizens or cops. Maybe it's to talk to them with your gun in your hand. So I started working on that kind of stuff, and lo and behold, I found out Dustin had designed some equipment to facilitate this called Neuros, and
Mm-hmm.
I integrated those into my training. Um, but again, I'm jumping around a little bit here. So let's go back to the idea of undertrained skill sets. One, realistic starting positions, whether it's from a ready position. What's a typical ready position on the range? What do you observe with various instructors? Where is the gun pointed
I,
during
I
the ready
I'm the
position?
guy that is busting balls on this stuff constantly because there's a lot of instructors now teaching um, great guys that are really highly qualified technically. Um,
Hmm.
Teaching the student, like for example, John, you're going to come to my class and I'm going to shave a whole second off of your draw time. Holy crap, that's crazy, Mick. I'm already pretty quick. Like, how are we going to do that? We're going to shave a whole second off from concealment. Whoa, that's nuts because I can shoot really fast.
Yeah,
And we're going to start because I'm going to have you holding your t-shirt with
right,
your hand prepped on top of your pistol. Well, that's
right.
cool. Like, but so now
Yep,
I've got a sub-second draw
yep,
stroke with this perfect situation where I've
right,
got good body posture and I'm oriented to the target. So
yeah,
Um,
Awesome. Yeah.
like
I'm
this,
right there with
like,
you, brother.
is what I'm doing supporting the realities of violence, or am I?
Yeah.
I'm getting really good at a game or a stage or whatever your objective is, right? Like if we're
Yeah.
allowed to,
Back to mission
US,
statement.
yeah, if my
Yeah.
USPSA match allows me to have my hand hovering a half inch off my gun, well, clearly that I'm going to do that if time is the only
Sure.
metric. I used to compete in USPSA inside the waistband with a Glock 19 20
Nice.
years ago, and
Yep.
guys would make fun of me. I
Yep.
was like, but that's the gun I carry. Like, why?
Yeah.
I don't, I, and I'm not against the race gun or anything else.
No.
I just didn't give a shit. That's the gun that's on my hip when I
Yeah.
walk off the range. All I'm doing
So
is
your
swapping.
pair, yeah, your
Go ahead.
thinking and mine are very parallel. And that is, I only enjoyed the game for what it gives me in reality.
Mm,
Uh, and I have nothing against those that enjoy the game for the game. Man, power on. It's awesome. Everybody needs a sport and a recreational activity, and I got nothing against it. But know the difference and teach the difference if you're teaching and make sure that your students understand the difference. I've had a bunch of people like just that discussion that, want to tell me that, well, this posture is natural enough. And this person or that person who's watched a bunch of videos or seen a bunch of real stuff says that it's a legitimate starting posture. And I'm like, all right. So over the next couple days, I want you to pay attention and I want you to note when is the next time you see an individual in that posture other than here on the range?
hmm
Never, never. It is not a natural posture that people stand around in. And even if you adopt it, it's unnat. It might be natural for you at that point, but it's unnatural enough it's going to stand out. We know criminal actors, man, body language, communication skills, reading the potential victim is something they're good at. You don't think they're going to notice that you all of a sudden move your hands into that posture, or you're the only person in the room standing like that? You're
hmm
gonna, that isn't what I want. If it's what you
I
want,
want to make a point to the listeners, viewers, real quick. We're talking about a ton of different stuff. So, like, some people call it hard skills. I've always thought about them mechanical skills, like the shit I can do with my hands. Like, I can throw a football farther than most any guys I know
wow,
once,
yeah,
once.
okay, interesting,
I'm not going to
interesting,
go play a football game. I can't
right?
play football. My sister once dated the quarterback from Northwestern University. He could throw the ball like 30 yards in a line drive, and when it hit my hands, it would come straight through and
Yeah,
bounce off
yeah,
my teeth.
yeah, yep,
Like I can't do that, but I can throw the
right.
ball one time. So like I don't have the skills that he can, just like some guy that can draw really good and blaze like a 2 second bill drill or 1.5 second bill drill. I just watched this bill drill championship, and it was it was cool, kind of like I don't know how many push-ups you can do or something, but
Yeah,
like if the form is for shit, who cares? And like these guys are like missing the A zone by a foot, trying to get these
yeah,
crazy. We're talking 1-3, 1-4 bill drills, and it's just this ragged uh, example of this like blazing hard skill set. And just for you guys listening and talking, John's talking about not just that, but like this now we're talking processing or understanding of the environment. I grew up in the country. I'm an hour from downtown Chicago. I got family all over the city, and even though I spend time there constantly, it's not my environment. I don't know what's normal or not normal on a street corner on the west or south side of Chicago. I don't live there. So, like, I just want to make sure folks are understanding that as we're talking about these different things, you guys might need to take some notes or pop in the comments. What is it that you meant by this or that? So continue, John.
yeah. So on physical skills, I like to look at two things. I like to look at realistic starting positions, and even from gun in hand, whether it's home defense or whoever. Most of the schoolhouses that I'm an inveterate student as well, man. I love taking training, and nowadays I don't see that much new in terms of technique, at least not much that's really exciting in terms of technique, but how people teach is my passion. How
Hmm.
you transmit that information. So I love to see it. So bottom line, most of the schoolhouses, an in-hand ready position is quote oriented at the base of the target stand. Well, okay, that's cool, and I need to know what I can do from there. I like to practice. I have a concept that I like to practice things in their most complete mode. And by that, I mean backed as far back as it might happen. What about the situation where I don't know, I'm in the grocery store when I hear gunfire and screams and close enough, I decide gun in hand, but which aisle is he going to come out of? Is he going to come out of the end of this aisle or that aisle? So I
Hmm.
like to practice my gun in hand ready position from what I call a neutral position. I don't yet have a single subject. And therefore, if we call that 100%, let's say I'm moving. So my standard for that is the gun should be oriented to the ground within about 6 feet of your feet, the shooter's feet. I should be able to scan and be able to respond anywhere in my field of view. And now if I get to, narrow that down to he could only come, out of these two aisles, well, I can raise the gun and be closer to that. If I get down to there's one guy there that I need to be concerned with, I can raise the gun a little further and be oriented near his feet. But if all of my repetitions only are the last 25% of that movement, as in from oriented at his feet, I'm not necessarily very good when I have to start all the way back at the other one. So I'd rather do
Hmm.
most of my reps from the 100% motion and do some of them from the closer motion because it can happen and know where I am time wise on that. So that's one of my concepts. Um, so another one is, and that's kind of related to starting with the idea of what is it you're likely to know in the situation
Hmm.
as well. So that brings us into things like, kind of going back to Dustin's work and the neuro system, where I can give you a setting that you don't know how long your exposure is going to be. I can tell you that, if I project a green laser gun onto this subject, it's not a target till it's a threat. It might be for 3 seconds, it might be for 5 seconds. You need to engage. I believe that if you've shot him some in the chest and it's not working, maybe you should try some other anatomical area. So, in a 5 second exposure coming from the holster, you might have time for three to the chest, three to the head, maybe even moving down to the pelvis.
Hmm.
And now there's nothing magic about three, totally arbitrary. Pick two, pick any number you want. Um, but the idea is now I have exposures of unknown duration. I need to be thinking about where I'm moving the gun around between. His behavior can change in the midst. Um, I can set up what I call proximity situations to simulate your ability to, there's another person there that isn't innocent. You don't know which way anybody's going to move. At some point, if they move in conjunction to come into alignment with each other, I'm going to have to pause in my engagement of the threat. Even though he's still a deadly threat, I'm not going to shoot through the good guy to get him, or I'm going to prefer not to shoot when the good guy is immediately behind him. So might need to move. We can build those kind of things in. Um,
I've been using lasers for years. I see
yeah,
very few people using them. I buy them in boxes of 12
yeah,
on Amazon. I give them to
cool.
guys all the time, but
Yep,
I see
awesome.
very few
Yeah,
people doing that.
yeah. Well, and what's cool with Dustin's setup, I did the same thing and I love it, and I still do sometimes. It's quick, it's easy. Um, the Neuro Devices, imagine you've got a shot timer with three lasers grafted onto it, one
Okay.
red, two green. You can put lenses on them as well. So now on the shot timer, I see when the lasers come on and off, as well as all your shots. So now I can see your response time, both to start, to change, to stop. They're networkable. So now I've got multiples of them going. They're programmable. So I can give a group of students the exact same experience. One of my favorite drills is one I call three subjects, three dimensions. So imagine you're on the firing line. You've got your first subject is 3 yards directly in front of you. There is another subject 3 to 4 yards directly behind him. He's there in the real world because one or the other has just moved to bring him into alignment, but you can't see whether he's a threat or not. From that second subject, let's put him at the 7 yards from you line. There's another subject to your right about a pace and a half. So you're there, you've got one right in front of you, you can see. You've got one diagonal to your right at the 7 yard line, a pace and a half off. If I put a threat indicator on the one right in front of you, well, you want to shoot him, but he's in direct alignment with what may be a no shoot right behind him. So while I'm drawing, I should be moving to manage my foreground and my background. In that setting, if I move to the left, I simply put another person in threat. So obviously I need to move to my right to get a clean shot, foreground and background. Pretty simple, straightforward. If, however, the one directly in front of you is a threat and the one to your right is also a threat at 7 yard line, well, I have a rule. I don't like to look at the wrong end of guns. I don't like to look at muzzles. I definitely don't want to look at two muzzles. So I should be moving hard to my left to bring those two into alignment, right? Flanking maneuver in the military, whatever we want to label it, but I'm bringing them into alignment, just like fighting unarmed. You don't wade into the middle of two guys who want to kick your ass. You're going to maneuver around the edge, deal with them one at a time, stay maneuvering to try and keep it that way as long as you can. So I'm moving hard to my left. Another possibility, another rule of thumb for us comes out of military close quarters battle. We don't take a shot within 1 meter of a friendly unless there are no options, right? Obviously, a hostage situation would be one of those. There are no options. But if
And
I'm
just so people are
mobile,
aware, you're talking about a meter of lateral offset, of course, not
exact,
in front
yeah.
of you, but yeah.
Yeah, lateral. So, and you could, a meter's just a rough. I have people just stretch out your arms, and I'll
Yeah.
say, I don't want to take a shot within your wingspan if I can help it. If there's a bad guy over your shoulder, and I could move hard to my right, for example, so that by the time the gun comes out, I've made you safer, that's what I should do. So we can build all these. People talk about awareness, but awareness is just, well, without awareness, you can't begin to react. But awareness without a knowledge of what to do when you see something is not all that helpful either.
It's
Uh,
like a big medicine kit, but not knowing how to administer any of it.
yeah,
Got this
yeah,
$5,000 box of medical supplies.
right.
I haven't opened it.
Yeah. So if I light up that target to the right as a threat, you start moving hard to your right to clear the guy that's right in front of you. But as you do, you should be curious about the guy that was behind him that you can't see. Guess what? He's a threat too. So now I need to continue to move even further laterally so I can engage both of those without putting the innocent in front in threat. So just examples of things that
Some minor thinking man's games.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I shouldn't, not minor in the sense of it's very simple to set up. You don't need a lot to do that. I like that.
Well, and it's not really, I don't really consider that tactics. It really is just, I mean, it's the same stuff you do if you played any kind of field sports, right? If
Mm-hmm.
that was soccer or field hockey or whatever, you're not going to pass too close to a defender that they can intercept it.
Mm-hmm.
If you got two defenders coming at you, you're going to cut back and try and line them up so that they can't double team you in the moment. It's some people have that, and some people have never experienced anything like that, um, and they definitely haven't experienced it while shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And it brings us to another thing we haven't done. So the difference there between all those field sports, even people that have that on the field sports, none of the field sports tell you that you've got to shift your focus back to something that's at arm's length and bring several objects at arm's length into sharp focus and alignment, right? Particularly those of us that grew up with iron sights, front sight, front sight, front sight, that mantra, that front sight should be crystal clear. Your rear sight will be slightly blurry and your target will be very blurry. Well, the Air Force figured out something related a long time ago. They did a massive amount of research with the advent of jet fighters. They wondered how people were going to be able to keep up. Could people keep up with the speeds involved and manage to make the decisions in a timely fashion? This was, before we had such sophisticated missiles. Um, and one of the things they found was that pilots who were tested at over 180 degrees of peripheral vision would, in a mock dogfight, miss a second threat coming in only 35 or 40 degrees off the primary threat. So it's not a question of what they're able to see, but their perception, tunnel vision in effect, had shrunk down to the point of missing something at 35 degrees off.
Mm-hmm.
That is massively compounded if you are focused on something at arm's reach like a front sight. So the need to add a second subject to the engagement, the need to pause your engagement because somebody's coming into alignment before, in front of or behind. All of these things, we actually have a mechanical perceptual issue that we've learned from doing this. There are people that just you've got to learn to shoot with a degree of target focus to be able to do this stuff successfully. Excuse me.
It's okay.
Take a swallow here.
What are you drinking?
Coffee.
What kind?
Yeah. This is from a local roaster that I get the beans and grind at home. I'm a bit of a coffee snob when I can be. This,
Me too. We'll send you some of ours. We roast in
ooh,
house
yeah,
here.
love
Yeah.
it. Absolutely. Very cool.
So
So
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to just say, I'm listening to this and kind of going back a step. This morning, I'm talking to a friend of mine. I'm kind of like one of the guys that started shooting 92s again about 15 years ago. They were
Okay.
not cool
Yep.
anymore.
Yep.
So there was only a few of us shooting them. Uh, and so guys that shoot them often will, now that's like sexy again to shoot 92s.
Hmm.
Ernest Langdon and
Yep.
Wilson both
Yep.
brought some new sexy ones back to the market.
Yeah.
Anyway, somebody sends me a picture and they're like, "Man, I cleaned this sludge out of the flaring pin channel." And I'm like, "Yeah,
Yep.
man, that's kind of like a known thing with the 92.
Right.
You got to get in there." And he goes, "I didn't know that." And then,
Right.
we're chatting about it, and I thought about it. I'm like, how funny that anybody, any cop, any armorer, anybody that had any experience with those knew if you're shooting them, you got to clean that out or it's going
Yeah.
to impede the forward travel of the
Yep.
firing pin.
Yep.
And all this knowledge is gained, and then it's not sexy to shoot this gun anymore.
Right.
So all of a sudden 20 years later that knowledge it's not gone, but there's no connection between these communities of people, 60 something year old dudes that were shooting them in service or
Yep.
competing with them are not communicating with these 20, 30-year-old guys, so that information's just like gone. So now they're figuring it out again. Look what I just figured out about this gun. So like some of these
Yep.
guys are actually suggesting like, oh, I just found this issue. No, you
Yeah.
haven't found shit. People knew this, and it's not an insult, but kind of the
No.
stuff that stuff that we're talking about. People keep
Yeah.
looking at this. You look at what Cooper and those guys were doing, trying to scratch their head and sort out some of these. How can we
Sure.
make ourselves better prepared to win in violence? And
Yeah.
like we get like way down a rabbit hole and center axis relock or whatever, some weird little funny
Oh
thing,
yeah.
and then somebody kind of steers it back towards center, and then it goes off over here, and you know what I'm saying.
Well, and nowadays, I mean, the uh, the algorithm, the social media algorithms are so effective at feeding us what it thinks we want to hear that it's real easy to get in a silo and not get any new information.
Mm,
Yeah, I take great pride. If you looked at my just my email, for example, you would not know there's stuff there from far left liberal sources. I'm a little more cautious actually with the far right these days. There's less of that in there, but there's certainly a bunch of moderate stuff. There's stuff from all over. If you don't make an effort to get out there and get exposed to a wide variety of information in that today's day and age, you are going to get fed the same stuff over and over again.
mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm,
yeah, absolutely. Japanese martial arts traditionally they talk about there's three phases in the growth of a student. It's obedience, divergence, separation, and the idea was through the obedience stage is where you make sure that everything gets passed on, right? That all of the existing information is passed on. Divergence, you begin to put it together differently and look at maybe different situations and problems. And then eventually comes separation, where you become, the sensei yourself and are passing on. You're now taking the next group and doing the same thing with it. So,
It
uh,
seems like this shooting space, there's a lot of guys that are shortcutting that and they
Mm.
go shoot a gun for 6 months or a year, and now they are senseis. There's a lot of
Yeah.
that happening.
Yeah. Well, and frankly, our knowledge about training has advanced to such a great degree that people are developing amazing physical skills in relatively short periods of time. And man, I'm
Hmm.
in awe of some of these guys and their draw times and split times. I mean, I get split times or something I guess has always been easier to me. Draw times. And now I'm one of those 60-something-year-old guys, multiple shoulder problems and can't put in the reps that I used to on drawing. So I'm struggling with that, but I see, and I'm amazed, man, and I'm just all the more power to them. I mean, I love watching some of the folks out there now, and just how good they are is
Hmm.
amazing. And there are things I can pick up from them, and that's the key, right? Is to maintain that curious mind, keep trying to pick stuff up.
I
So
like
we
that.
share a little more about stuff from that I look at. So we talked about. Starting positions, we talked about exercising the perception, cognition, decision cycle. That is massive. That is probably the largest single piece. Movement is another one that I'm really big on, and efficient movement. And efficient movement, and people don't understand. Again, so many people don't understand, right? Don't understand movement. Somebody posted a video a while back, and I don't know if it was Matt Little, that posted it, but it was a class that Matt was running, and Gabe White was in the class. And both of those guys, man, super, super skilled. Gabe is one of the
Gabe's a
freaky,
stud.
freaky fastest dudes I have ever seen. But there was a video of him doing a movement drill that comes, and I should know the name of it. I apologize to Matt. But it's a specific drill that he does that he explains in his book came from an incident that happened when he followed somebody, pursued somebody into an alley that then turned on him, and he needed to engage the guy. And so it's a get off the line of power and engage. And watching those two men move, if you are a student of sports science as I am, it was remarkable. Both of them crazy fast. Both of them got to the end of the drill crazy fast. Gabe, however, utilized what's commonly called a loading step or split or scissor step, like it's used in tennis to receive a serve right before the ball leaves or contacts the racket. You drop down, you compress, you get some plyometric tension, you see which way the ball is going, and you explode in the appropriate directions. Shortstops do the same thing. So, but in effect, in the first tenth or two, you go only straight down. You don't actually displace laterally at all. But you're primed, and man, Gabe explodes out of there and gets to where he needs to be really quickly. Matt, on the other hand, moves like a martial artist. He picks up the lead foot in the direction that he wants to go, which begins to displace his center immediately, which actually is more effective if you're taking fire or taking a punch, because you're now moving the target in the first couple of tenths versus later. They both got somewhere really fast and shot really well, but that's an example of, you can dig into that, and depending upon what you're trying to accomplish, are you trying to get to the next shooting position, for example, the end of the barricade in a USPSA match? Gabe's motion might have got him there sooner. If you're trying to get off the X because something is incoming, Matt's motion definitely moved him more in the first quarter second. Um, Now it's getting down in the weeds, but if you're a fighter, you need to know that.
Hmm.
It's critical information as a fighter. We see people shooting and moving, and let's say they're moving across, whatever distance. My indoor range is only 7 yards across, so it's 23 feet actually. So we know that in a second and a half, somebody can go across because you got to start slowing down so you don't run into the other wall. We know that, let's say their draw time is a second and a half just for ease, right? So you should only get one shot off in the time it takes you to move across the bay. But what do people do? They want to shoot 3, 4, or 5 times. So did they all of a sudden get 3 times faster in their draw and shooting? Of course not. They got 3 times slower in their movement.
Yeah, they slowed them
If
down.
you're trying to not get shot, does that make sense? So how movement is taught is something that I think is a gap. My goal, what I do with students, I go through a process, and I want their first objective is see how close can you get to going 90% as far as you would go if you were just running from here to there, and not adding more than 10% to your draw time. So let's get 90% of your draw time and 90% of your movement and make that a goal and see what we can do with that, which requires very different drills building up to that skill than are typically done in shooting. So movement, use of cover, it's not as prevalent in the civilian world, but when it's there, it's pretty awesome. I
Hmm.
I think it was Pat Rogers that I first heard first told me that when it comes to between you and a bullet, anything's better than a cotton shirt. And so um, but it needs to be covers frequently taught as like, once you get to it, you have all the time in the world to organize yourself and it's now running at your pace. And that's not the way fighting works. We need to have rapid assumption of optimal use of cover. So I do 3 to 5 second drills, same thing. You're starting step and a half, 2 steps out of cover. Again, we're using the laser to indicate the go signal. You got to get in there, optimize your use of cover, and get your hits in that same 3 to 5 seconds. Um, so really, kind of the summary is I call it applied defensive handgun skills because that is my focus. Is the application of those skill sets into a defensive setting.
I dig all that. I have a very, like you said, very similar mindset about these things. Uh, of course, like what we see often, you get certain schools of thought show up, and you're going to take pistol one, two, three, four, pistol 19, and people develop by people, I mean schools or instructors, they're developing business rather than passing on information. Of course, somebody that's never put a holster on probably shouldn't be engaging, running across a range laterally and doing stuff like that. But that seems to be a big gap. The performance stuff, and I've got a bunch of friends. I was just razzing one on the internet today because him and three buddies are doing one of them's a world champion rifle shooter. He's talking
Mhm,
about, and three gun guy. Come
mhm.
to our event. It's the most amazing event of the year. And I said, well, it can't be because my event is the week later. I'm busting his chops.
Right,
But
right.
they are
Yeah.
focused on the gear is very centric to high performance rifle shooting.
Mhm.
Big extendo magazine wells that are like, just big as your fist, and just guns purpose built for the sport. They're
Sure.
freaking awesome, but
Yeah.
they're from their clothing to their eye pro to the gun itself, um, to the engagement distances and all the things that they're doing. None of it's a fight.
Mhm.
Does any of that take away from their abilities? No. But the
Nope.
guys that go to that class, every single thing that they're doing is geared towards the end goal of winning one of these competitions or being better. And I really think that's like the the point, the nuance of the discussion of the guy that said, "Do you really need to say this?" I think it's you don't know what you don't know, right? Like I've trained grappling arts, jujitsu, I've done Muay Thai and Western boxing and things like that for years as well. And
Mhm.
some little nuance, like grab my collar like this
Mhm.
versus like that, completely changes the whole end state of the thing. But somebody that doesn't know what the end state is will just grab any old way, not understanding one thing helps me choke you, the other one breaks my own thumb. And
Mhm.
like, so that's that I think that's a huge issue. I call it the what about. Like anybody can say, "Well, John, what about this? You've told
Mhm.
me all these things, but what about this?" And it's my argument to say, "You're dumb, I'm not, I'm right, you're wrong. You didn't say this one thing that I have found is a must-have skill of some sort." So many nuances. Are you
Yeah.
friends at all with Dave Harrington?
Uh, just, Dave and I have had a couple of phone conversations, and I don't think I've ever met Dave in person.
No.
But a year or so ago, we connected on a SF Brothers Facebook site actually, and had a couple of phone calls exchanging ideas. What made you think of Dave?
Dave's an old friend of mine. I'd consider
Yeah.
him a mentor in a lot of ways. And people, if Dave hears this, I love you. People love Dave or they hate Dave. And they
Mhm.
hate Dave because he's just like, he's a, 20 something year Green Beret, very hard and regimented. And it's not my way or the highway, but he's just got a certain way about him.
Yep.
But I've seen him watch people do the most bizarre things to me. And I'll say, why didn't you say something to that guy? And he's like, why the hell do I care? It's not unsafe.
Yep.
It's, if it works
Yep.
for him, that's fine.
Yep.
And he's got a very open mind in the sense of fighting skills,
Hmm.
uh, but and understands that people have different needs too. Like you said, you're not going to draw as fast as you did when you were 21. Your shoulders are beat up. You're getting a little bit older, but um, it just seems like like you said, we put ourselves in these little silos. I can beat you in a bill drill, thus I'm better than you. I just kicked you in
Well,
the shin. Yeah.
I think a really important concept there as well is that I've got a bunch of friends that came from real world backgrounds that are also high level competitors, and we've mentioned some of them. And I kind of laugh sometimes though with somebody who his the difference, and it might have been Mike Pannone that said it. I could have been Dave. It doesn't really matter, but so many people have said something similar. I've never been confused about whether I'm in a match or a fight.
Mm,
Well, absolutely. But what that implies is that the person saying it has two channels. They have the fully developed skill set to shoot competitively, and they have the fully developed skill set to fight. They can flip the switch between the two. So many people haven't really, in my opinion, examined what their development is for the fight.
mm,
And, I'm not saying what they're doing is bad. It's not. It's freaking awesome. But if you want to be well prepared for a thing, you probably ought to examine the thing that you're trying to be prepared for and do a needs analysis again. Racing, we look at, Baja versus Indy versus, whatever. Man, those driving skills absolutely translate. However, if you've never thought about what's it take to be in one or the other and examine what you need to do different, you're not going to figure it out. Well, maybe you
hmm
will, but you're at an enormous disadvantage trying to figure it out in the moment. So,
Right.
you know, man, as I said, I'm in awe of those folks that are highly developed in the performance side and fighters.
Mm,
Um, I'm less moved when somebody who only has a performance side wants to tell me that what I know is important from my experience fighting isn't important. Uh,
mm.
and I'm like, okay, dude, whatever.
That's it's such
You
a it's such a
know?
it's a very nuanced topic that it's extremely interesting to me. It's one this area for I've got a lot of medical friends, doctors
Mhm.
specifically, and I've got this group, 4 or 5 medical doctors, practicing medical doctors, and I'll insert myself into these discussions. I'm an EMT, so I don't know shit compared to these guys, but we're
Mhm.
talking about a specific medical treatment, and I'm just reading. This is a
Sure.
online chat between 5 guys,
Hmm.
and I'm laughing. One of them went to one of the top medical schools in the country. One of them teaches at one of the top medical schools. So these are not dummies. And
Hmm.
they're arguing like cats and dogs. And I'm like, damn, like you would think as a layperson, me, like this thing would be very well sorted out. And it's not even close because here
Right.
4 of you are in complete disagreement about what as a
Sure.
patient or a layperson in the field. And so in this space, um, you sit and you look at different folks. Usually, those that have done some real fighting don't tend to engage in a lot of the conversations down these places.
Mhm.
Dave Spalding. You know Dave.
I do. Yep.
Dave tells a
Absolutely.
story. It's not my story, but I use the story. He's at a dinner after training, and there is a retired PJ at the dinner table, and
Hmm.
there's a bunch of the students are arguing about which tourniquet is best, which is kind of
Right.
comical in the big
Yep.
scheme of things. Like you go
Hmm.
to a country club and look at like a bunch of dudes after a day of golf and imagine them arguing about a device to occlude blood, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
so this I guess this PJ shoveling food in his mouth and he's listening and nobody asks him, right? This guy that's like highly trained superhuman medic and
Mhm.
I don't know, rat's tourniquet versus a cat. I don't know what the discussion was. And somebody, I think Dave said, why don't you guys ask this guy? He might know.
Right.
And
Hmm.
so he like really quickly says XYZ, this is the better choice because of, and the guys are
Yep.
like, you're wrong,
Yep.
blah, blah, blah. So his response is, your opinion doesn't trump my experience.
Yep.
And I thought about that. The problem is we say like our experience, like, well, my experience, I'll hear guys say, like, well, I run my Glock like this out in the world, but you've never shot somebody with it. And you're making these, and I'm not even saying you have to shoot somebody to have an opinion, but like we talk to about these things as if I'm leaving my house and I'm out operating with a firearm. Like, nope, never have, hope I don't have to. And
Mhm.
that becomes my experience. Like, John, you've got all this real experience, but it doesn't trump my experience. Well, that's moronic.
Yep.
It's moronic.
Well, I mean, we get into, opinions and opinions about technical things, opinions about everybody can have an opinion, but they're not all of equal value.
Mm.
And the fact of the matter is that, training, research, and application, as in experience, actual application of it, makes some people's opinions of greater value to me than others. And again, that doesn't mean that that's just on one topic, right? It's just on that topic. And man, there's so much we can learn from. I mean, we're kind of tiptoeing around here now, kind of the performance side. And man, there's so much to
Are
learn.
we tiptoeing?
And well, I guess we're not.
I
I'm
don't feel
putting it
like
out
I
there.
am.
There's
I'll
so
say
much to
whatever.
learn, man, and I want to learn it. I want to learn it, and I want to. But at the same time, something I can tell you that is consistent in my experience with instructors or with people is people who have been in bad places, armed, unarmed, it really doesn't matter, will tell you it's pretty much a common theme that what's going on between your ears is really has such a greater impact on the outcome than certainly your gear and frankly even skill set. There's some information out there now in the special operations community where some people have looked at, and unfortunately, it's classified, which, one of those things. Oh, great, John, you're going to tell me this exists, and then you're telling me it's classified. Right, I'm supposed to believe you. But there are enough people now that will tell you that they have had access and seen it, and they have looked at shooting skill sets and tried to figure out how much time should we spend. So the problem as a military operator or several other types, there is so much that you need to be good at, everything from call for fire to medical stuff to putting bullets on target to, I say, call for fire, putting ordnance on target from aircraft to communication. There's so much you got to be good at that if you're really designing a train up program, you really need to look at, where do I spend my time? And
Mm.
we want to spend enough time on the critical things, but we can't spend all our time on any one of them. Um, so it is a relevant question. How good do we need to be at a particular skill set is a
You
relevant
just
question.
brought it to the point I was trying to drive to. And
Yeah.
that I think is I got a friend that just did a 112-mile run across the desert. God bless him. That seems
Yeah.
disgusting to me.
Yeah.
Makes my feet
Yep.
hurt just thinking about it. So
Right.
there's my friend Les Keys Martoni, national IDPA champion, was a shooter for Wilson Combat, CZ, Beretta,
Mhm.
Langdon he shot for, doesn't matter. He called
Mhm.
it chasing the dragon. He had a
Yep.
very good job. I don't know if you ever met Les or come upon him.
I don't
Great
believe so.
dude. He's
Yeah.
got multiple master's degrees in like sciences
Cool.
and can shoot like crazy. And when I met him
Uh-huh.
20ish years ago, he was starting to get really good and then surpassed everybody. This
Hmm.
dude would just destroy guns dry firing them.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
he's chased this dragon that he'll tell you almost took his marriage away, almost
Hmm.
cost him jobs for plastic trophies. There's no
Hmm.
money. And I guess my point is, at what point was Les good enough to protect himself and his family or his community? Because now he's a police officer, um, versus like it's like racing children. At some point, there's no winning for these kids. And of course, there's a puncher's chance and all that. But if I spend all my time just getting really good I give myself arthritis and like blown my elbows up with
Yep.
tendonitis, doing like two shot draw strokes over and over again. Or you've
Yep.
done it. You know what I'm
Yep.
talking about. Mounted a rifle so many times to my face that I've
Yep.
exploded the.
Exactly. I tell people,
Yeah,
yeah, if this isn't sore at the end of a day of training,
right,
you're not doing it right.
right, right.
Funny.
But at some
Yep.
point,
Yeah.
besides all of the there is a good enough, but there's a
Yeah.
slippery slope to say that because people have excellence breeds excellence and all these things. Yeah, but I also, unlike the special operations guys, I've got to make time to push my kid in the swing. I've got to make time to go for a walk with my wife. I've got to cut the grass. I've got to call my mother and all these other things. So, like, what
Yep.
are the and then let's not even talk about physical skills because I might not shoot my drunk uncle at the party
Mhm.
where he's
There
being
you go.
obnoxious if I
Yep.
just smoke like that. So I think that and we don't all have that much time. I'd love to.
Yeah.
I've got a record player out
Exactly.
there. I'd love to play some records. you know,
And I'm right there with you because I was taught, as in my early in my martial arts career, I was imbued with the idea that it's never done. You're always seeking greater and greater perfection.
Mm.
It's never done. And I get it. But again, then when we move, and I love it. And I have pursued some things that way. And I maybe we'll get to a point where I have the time to do that again. But at the same time, if you're going to go out and do it practically, you've got to recognize that there are other factors that will impact your success, your ultimate success or failure, as defined by your mission statement. And you have to spend time on those too. And as you've just articulated, none of us have all the time that we'd like to have. So at some point, man, I hate to say this out loud, you shoot good enough. Right? Now you
Well,
gotta keep doing it. You gotta keep, it's perishable. We gotta keep it up.
there
But
are some baselines though, right? Like,
absolutely,
and that I
absolutely.
think is the hard part. Like you talking about people gaming, running laterally on your range because somewhere in their brain they want to send 3 rounds. Like,
Mhm.
what does that like? What's that look like to John? Like, should I
Mhm.
have a first shot on a 10-yard A zone in 2 seconds, 1 second, 14 seconds? Like, what's that look like for an average Joe
Yeah.
Schmo?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and what I try and do and bring out with what I'm doing in training and using the neuros is that it depends. If all you have to do is stand still and shoot, that's one thing. But if you need to be over there to make the shot, well, we've got to spend the time to do that too. Now, at some point, is there a stand still and deliver as a baseline? Absolutely. And exactly what that is, yeah, I don't know. We can argue about it. What I do know is when it comes to subsequent shots, speed of your mechanical speed will exceed your speed of perception.
Mm.
Um, you can get that pretty quickly with folks. I mean, I could take somebody from a beginner and probably, I don't know, pick a number, but within a year, certainly we can get their mechanical speed faster than their speed of perception, and that's not where we want to be.
And
So
basically, just so you guys listening understand what he's saying, you can press the trigger faster than you can stop yourself from pressing the trigger.
yeah. And just even the idea, and it's not all stop. Like I say, it's if I set up three subjects, or and you don't know if one, two, or three of them are going to get in the fight. Um, do you have the ability while getting adequate hits on the first one to have some awareness of the second and third one? Where are they? Are they moving? What are they doing? Are they getting in the fight too? Or is the go signal for the second guy going to be when you start hearing loud noises and feeling pain? Um, and again, there's an actual physical process there of learning to get adequate hits while seeing outside your sight picture. And those shooting dots, it's much easier to do so if you're using the dot correctly. That gets into, we get into some technical stuff there. But with iron sights, particularly if you've been taught a hard front sight focus, many people have demonstrated to me that they are incapable of recognizing that the stimulus that is only 18 inches outside where their sight picture is, they will not recognize a change in stimulus that says they ought to be doing something else. And, well, John, can that happen in reality? And, well, maybe not 18 inches, maybe he's a whole step away. And it'd be nice to know that you need to be adding him to the fight. He's about to get in the way. You need to be modifying what you're doing. You should start moving in a direction. There are just so many things.
Mm-hmm.
And the point is, seek out ways to practice it. That's all I'm saying. Is just instead of the people that I can't say I don't understand them, but I could never go this route. Somebody posted a couple years ago, I don't even remember the drill. It was shoot X number, reload, shoot X number. And this guy literally posted a video where he said he spent like 3 hours, took a break for lunch, and came back and spent another 2.5 hours trying to do this in, some crazy time, under 2 seconds or something. And it didn't even matter what it was. And then he did it once and he was super pleased. And you watch him shooting and you realize that the once he did it was just an accident. It was just a random event that he actually got the hits in that amount of time. Just blindly going at a physical skill like that isn't the best use of your time, in my opinion. If
That's what I was
it makes
talking
you feel
about
good,
early
go
on
for it.
in the discussion. That's a strange thing to me. That's like the dudes that show up to train and all they want to do is spar and not
Yeah.
drill a technique, and they just want to throw hands and grapple around and get hot and sweaty. Like, all
Yep.
right, man, you're not going to get any better. Cool.
Yep. Well, and then to go in a completely different direction of something else I try and introduce people to, and it's related to the concepts of immediate action drills. It's related to we start getting into tactics, but teaching people how. Well, easiest to give an example. I use the shooting at the church in White Settlement, Texas, several years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
And there are two heroes there that had volunteered themselves to be on the church security team and keep the congregates safe. One of them paid with his life. The other one, Jack Wilson, if I remember correctly, made a shot at about 12 yards on a moving target, etc. And heroes.
Mm-hmm.
But my background, I come from absolutely no holds barred after action reviews. Um, if anybody friendly got hurt, we need to look at it and say, is there any way we can do better next time? And so I use that as an example of a concept I call position, prepare, perform. And what we see in that is so there was a time that I did video analysis as part of my job, looking at terrorist videos, for example, and analyzing their techniques, tactics, and procedures, and looking at what that might mean to us in terms of countermeasures and that sort of thing. So I have a process that I was taught and that I've used literally, hundreds of times. And if I analyze that video, what I see is Jack Wilson gripped his gun and not move from that position for several seconds while he processed what was going on. And again, this is not, people will jump on it and go, oh my God, John is criticizing this man. I give him all the honor in the world for being willing to step up, and I acknowledge his skill to ultimately take the shot. However, when we analyze it, I can tell you that what we see is a very common situation where people take 2 to 4 seconds to process an unexpected stimulus. And what can we do about that? Well, one of the tools I use is this concept I call position, prepare, perform. So, in a situation like that, I see somebody that is a person of interest, and I begin thinking about one, am I in the right place? Right place to do what? To see what I need to see and do what I need to do. While moving to the right place, I'm thinking about, okay, what are the things that they could do that I have to respond to? I always start with the worst case scenario. He could become a deadly threat. Well, what would that look like if he becomes a deadly threat? In other words, what would be my first indicator? Most likely his hands, unless he's choking somebody. The deadly threat is going to involve a deadly weapon. So, am I where I need to be to see his hands as soon as possible and to apply deadly force if I need to do it? If not, start moving my feet. While thinking about what's the next worst thing he could do, he could become physically assaultive. Well, what would I do if he becomes physically assaultive? So I've already begun to preload these things. What's the next thing he could do? He could become disruptive. He could stand up and disrupt the service. What am I going to do? And what are my teammates going to do? So I position and prepare. I'm mentally going through those. What do each of those things look like? What is my response if I see those things? Hey, look, he's up. What's he doing? He's talking to somebody. What's that in his hand? Oh my God, he's got a shotgun. He's got a weapon in his hand. I should do the thing I've prepared to do, draw and deliver fire. Um, that's an example of a process that is frankly second nature to me and to many people. But when I talk to people, I find that there's a surprising number of people that have never thought through or been talked through a process like that before. That's something as an instructor we need to pass on.
That reminds me of Coach Lou Holtz. What's important now? Win.
Yeah.
Sure, you've heard that. It's
Yep.
basically
Absolutely.
your version of that in a
Yep.
combative scenario, but
Yep.
um, which I
What's important and what am I doing with the
yeah
input?
yeah
So you're preloading it. The simplest version is I'm about to, or a simple version, about to exit an aircraft while in flight, right? Gonna parachute jump, static line. I have certain expectations. I'm going to feel and see certain things. But as I'm walking to the door, there's really only two branches that it can go wrong. One leads to this continued feeling of falling when beyond the time it should, and there's only one thing I should need to do in that case. The other leads to a sensation that I'm getting beaten up, worked over. That means I'm a hung jumper, and there's really only one thing I need to do there. So as you're walking through the door, you're running through those possibilities. You've already preloaded the responses. So when it happens, it's not a, oh my God, what is that? I'm surprised. It's a, oh, hey, the thing is happening that I've already thought about and prepared for. Let's get on with it.
Mm.
Um, and that type of thinking is just so valuable in self-defense situations.
I think we could probably have a whole nother hour conversation on mental preparation and visualization and things of that nature. We should probably plan to do that.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What is the method for people to get a hold of you, find you, train with you, read your
Yeah.
stuff, learn about you, take you to dinner, go for a long walk on the beach?
There you go. Well, no, never mind. Yeah, I don't do a great job, frankly, of being out there in social media and stuff. I do have classes. I own my own range, indoor range in outside of Seattle, Washington. I do a lot of training there. The majority of that is absolute beginners, man. I've got a great staff. We literally train, give or take. I think last year we were about 1,900. The year before, about 2,300 students. The
Awesome.
vast majority self-identify as new shooters. I'm on the road just about a half dozen times a year. At this point, my passion, my interest is to reach people that are hopefully the next generation or will become the next generation of instructors, give them some other things to think about to incorporate in their training. West Coast Armory North.com. Got to have the North in there. There's another company. West Coast Armory North.com. Look at the training page. I'm in a half dozen states the rest of this year. We've got stuff coming up, Mead Hall in Oklahoma. Going to be Randy Watts hosting us in Utah, I think is the next one. Going to be in Tennessee a couple of times. Going to be in Dallas. Going to be in upstate New York for people in that part of the country. But that's the place, westcoastarmorynorth.com, training, top of the page. It'll be labeled out of state. That is where I teach our applied defensive handgun skills class, or
I
that's where
like it.
you can sign up for it.
I appreciate you taking the time to share some of your knowledge and experience with us, John. It means a lot.
And I've been aware of what you're doing for several years. Did you attend something that I did at TACCon once upon a time?
Probably,
TACCon a couple
probably.
years
I'm not.
ago.
I
Yeah.
came to one TACCon to go help some of the Shiv work boys and support Paul.
Okay. That's what
Come
it was.
came down there a
Yeah.
number. It's got to be 5 or 6 years ago. I think it was
That's
at that Knoll attack
Yep.
range.
Yep.
Still
Yeah.
there by the
Yeah.
racetrack.
Yep. Absolutely.
I
Yeah.
probably came up and said hi because I know we had a mutual
Yep.
friend. But
Yeah, exactly. And I've watched what you're doing. And again, I'm not out on social media that much, but man, you've done some great stuff. I like how you think and how you're training.
that's
And
very kind.
said, it'd be awesome to get on there and share with your viewers some of what I'm doing as well.
That's
So
awesome.
thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. You guys go check them out. Give them a follow. If you're up in that region, the Seattle region, you might as well go stop by and sign up for a class. And as per always, be well. Don't be dickheads and go tell somebody that you love them. Oh, and buy some Ignis Lux coffee. I'm going to send John some
All
today.
right. I
We're
look forward to
roasting
that.
this week. Bye now. Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com.